Welcome back to iGen Politics. This is a podcast that makes politics engaging and relevant for all generations. This is Victor Xia, and I'll just say from the outset, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or any other platform, you're going to want to go to youtube.com/politicon because it's going to be a very, very interactive episode. But Jill, I'll kick it off to you.
Okay, and I'm Jill Wine-Banks, and I am at the Gerald Ford Presidential Museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Right now, the picture you're seeing of me, I am sitting at the presidential desk of Gerald Ford post-presidency. This is his office in the museum. I'm sitting in a chair that has a presidential seal.
Wow, has a presidential seal on it, yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to turn the camera away from me to show you the rest of the office. And then we're going to walk through the museum. Hold on.
Sounds good.
Okay, so here's his conference table from his desk.
Wow.
And this is, there's presidential seals on the doorknobs. And here's pictures of his mother and father. And I learned
today. Of course, you see the University of Michigan, blanket on the chair.
Oh, yes, you do. That is because, of course, he went to the University of Michigan undergrad and then to Yale Law School. Mm-hmm. But what I learned today is that the man shown here, who is Gerald Ford Sr., is actually his adoptive father. He was born with a different name. It wasn't Gerald. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Ford. It was Lester King. And I just heard a joke that said, he's the only president who was born a king. So
that's a good yes. Yeah. But he did not act as king, unlike Donald Trump.
He did not. He was a very decent and ordinary person. I'm now walking through the reception area of his desk, and someone is going to guide me out of here into a maze. Okay. We're going to see
Jill, while you're walking, why don't you tell our audience, I mean, what is the significance of Gerald Ford, especially to you?
Well, to me, that's a great question, Victor. Thank you for asking. Of course, Gerald Ford was Richard Nixon's appointed vice president. When Spiro Agnew resigned in disgrace after being, an information was filed against him. We're now approaching, by the way, Gerald Ford's congressional desk in Grand Rapids. He had an office in Grand Rapids. This is his desk there. But okay, so he was a congressman, a great public servant, and he then got appointed vice president after Agnew resigned, and he became president after Nixon resigned. Mm-hmm. And here's actually part of the Watergate exhibit.
Wow.
And it is Richard Nixon addressing the public after the burglary and saying he's not a crook. Mm-hmm. And then,
which was a lie.
Yes, of course. This is he has to give us the tapes. There's Archie Cox, my boss.
Archie Cox, yes.
And since there's background noise, I'll keep walking. Let's see, which way should we go? Okay, we're going to keep walking. And there's all sorts of, this is, of course, the headline.
Nixon resigns. Yeah.
And this is
Gerald
Ford and Betty Ford escorting out President and Mrs. Nixon as he was right after his official resignation.
Yeah.
Headlines everywhere were Nixon resigns.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the president of all the people, because what he worked for so hard was to reunite the country after the division of Watergate.
Right.
And now I'm going to approach the Oval Office.
The Oval Office replica. Yeah. Well, that looks, I wonder if that's the same size as the actual Oval Office, because one of the things that I remember from this summer is that the Oval Office is quite tiny.
Well, this is sort of small.
It is sort of small, okay.
And I think it does seem a little smaller than the real thing. Do you know? I think it is the same size. One of the most interesting things that I want to point out is that there is some controversy over whether During Nixon, there were sconces where those two small pictures are. You see the fireplace
Yep.
and the painting above it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's two smaller
To the
paintings
side.
on
Yep.
either side.
Yep.
There used to be sconces there. And the story that I heard today from someone who's on the foundation board, I believe, said that the story is that after Gerald Ford took over, they discovered that the sconces had microphones in them. Because remember, the microphones for the taping system were
Right,
in
right.
the Oval Office desk. They were in a number of places, and that they didn't know they were there. And he said, I want those out of here. I'm leaving the office. When I come back, I want them gone. And there were holes, and so they filled it with art. And
Huh.
I'm going to have to, I looked up, and I know from my experience going to the Richard Nixon Oval Office that there were sconces. And I did some research just now, and yes, indeed, we found pictures of the sconces. So, but I don't know if they were taken out because Gerald Ford didn't like them. So someone is going to try to contact David Kennerly, who was the White House photographer for President Ford. So anyway,
Wow,
this is
that's
the Oval
remarkable.
Office, and I think that's very exciting and cool. Here's a
Yes,
picture.
yes.
I'm from Chicago. He inherited a very bad economy, but do you recognize that person?
Oh, yes. Is he
Jesse
Jesse
Jackson.
Jesse Jackson? Yes, Jesse
Jesse
Jackson.
Jackson. Yes. So there you are. I mean,
Wow.
in the Ford Library,
And he
Ford
is
Museum.
still going today.
And he's still going today. Yes, we'd love to have him on iGen Politics. If he's listening, Reverend Jackson, we would love to have you as a guest. And here's a replica of the White House where, Victor, you worked this summer. So
Yes,
that
looks familiar. You have the East Wing, and then you have the Residency, and then you have the
Yes.
West Wing on the end. The only thing that it doesn't have is where like 99% of the employees work, which is the Eisenhower office building. But
exactly,
this is what
called the OEOB,
the
Old
OEOB.
Executive
Yes,
Office,
exactly.
which was, do you know what that was when it was first built?
You told me it was the Pentagon, right?
Pentagon.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, it was. That was the first Pentagon. Then I want to show you something that I found extremely exciting and important. Okay, guess what we come to now? This is part of the Betty Ford exhibit. And look at Betty Ford and what she's wearing.
ERA. Yes, I know that is for anyone who's listened to this podcast, that is Jill's new passion, and it should be all of our passions too, because it's so important. Wow. I mean, that was how long ago? That was what?
Well, this says in 1975.
Wow. Okay.
And so she was a big supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. She also was a supporter of Roe versus Wade. She said the decision belonged in the doctor's office, not the Congress. And did I have that? Not in back alleys, but in doctors' offices. So I thought that was fabulous. And here's, you see this pin here? I, of course, have that same, it's the green one. Let's see. That's as close as I can get. The ERA, yes. I have an ERA, yes pin. And here's some of her clothes from the 70s. She was quite a fashion plate in the 70s. And I'm going to show you from state dinners. I'm walking to where the foreign part of the museum is. And look at this dress with mink cuffs. Not politically correct anymore, but at the time it was. And his tails. This is Gerald Ford's. It's a white tie. Well, actually, he's wearing a black tie, but this is usually considered a white tie, which is above black tie because he's wearing tails. And this was how they served their foreign dignitaries. And we can't tell, but we think this might be Prince Philip that she's dancing with in this picture.
Ooh, I think that is Prince Philip.
Yeah, that's what we think it is, but we're not, I can't swear to that, and it's not identified. So we're going to keep walking toward where there's more Watergate exhibit. Okay, we're going to walk toward the more Watergate exhibit. Oh, I'll stop temporarily. This is from the bicentennial. And by the way, I was on the mall for the fireworks of the bicentennial.
Oh, wow.
And they were described as bicentennial tchotchkes. And there's actually toilet paper that says, wait, this is from the 76 election. Sorry, this is anti-Carter.
Oh, anti-Carter.
It says, I've
I mean, it's so interesting to see all of the
I've wiped
political.
my bottom with Jimmy. That's a
Right,
picture of
right.
Jimmy Carter. So we don't like that one. But there are some other buttons that I'll show you. And this is Carter and President Ford. And so anyway, these are all things from the bicentennial. Oh, that's a nice necklace. I would take that. Guys, I'm sorry, I can't get close enough. Let's see. Yeah, I can't get close enough to make that meaningful. But okay, now we're going to go to. Actually, should we go to the cabinet room or is there more Watergate first? Okay, we're going to go to Watergate and then we'll go to the cabinet room.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah. So, here's buttons that I like better. Sorry, my hand is getting in the way. It's very hard to hold. Here's for.
Oh, the political buttons for.
Yes, one says, "Pardon me,
Oh,
Gerald," which was for his pardon of Nixon. And the other is, "Remember Watergate, vote Carter. Even Agnew has a Watergate. Remember the bugging, vote Carter," etc. So these are the anti Ford buttons, which is pretty brave of the museum to show. And then there's just other memorabilia here. Whoops. And there's an alarm going off. Here is a Sony tape recorder, which Rosemary used a Sony for a few days of trying to transcribe before she got the Ur. This is not that Sony. This is a Sony that was in the President Richard Nixon's office that he used, I think, probably to record his not memoirs, but every day he recorded what happened. And so I think that's what it must have been used for. It's property of the government, and I think this is on loan from the archives. Yeah, this is and many of the people here are National Archive employees. And here's something, Victor, do you know what this is? Let's see if I can get close enough. Do you know what that is?
No, but it looks like something where you sort files. Or is that not it? No, I have no clue.
It's little, and
it's little, yeah.
It's called a Rolodex. And that's how people it was little cards that went on these things, and they were alphabetized. And I actually own a Rolodex that has the White House phone number on it and a few other ones. And this is, that it looks like a bomb, I know, but it's not. You know what that is? No way you would.
Fireworks. No clue.
It's not. It's actually a devised splitter so that Todd Christofferson clerked to Judge Sirica, and Judge Sirica could listen to the tapes together at the same time. So that they put this input into the tape recorder. And anyway, that's what that is. I thought that was interesting. And these, I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk through these. These are courtroom drawings, or in this case, this is from the Senate hearings. This is by Frida Ryder, who was the same courtroom artist who did the Watergate trial. And anybody who wants to read my book, there is a Frida Ryder drawing of me cross-examining Jeb Magruder, and by the same artist that's here. This is the Watergate burglars appearing before Judge Sirica. And this one is the Saturday Night Massacre.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I don't know why that's the Saturday. Wait a second. That's not the Saturday Night Massacre. Why does it say that? A lawyer presents evidence to the jury. I don't know who that is. That's really weird. That's clearly not the Watergate cover-up case. That must have been the Watergate break-in case, is what I'm going to say. And yeah. And here's a picture of the Watergate Hotel is on. I can't get rid of the shiny. Maybe on the left of this picture, the small white structure is Howard Johnson, where the lookouts were that were supposed to alert the burglars who were in the office building across the street. The Kennedy Center is in the upper, I don't know, let's see, can I point to it? Here. That's the Kennedy Center.
Kennedy Center, and that's the Watergate Hotel.
This is the office building, and this is the Howard Johnson.
Wow. We were actually just there this summer for the 50th anniversary of Watergate. Right. And so that was my first time actually being in that space. It was we went to a restaurant there and it was wonderful.
And that's right, we did. And
there was,
Oh dear. Well, okay. Or is there somewhere quiet that we could talk, that he and I can talk? Should we go back to the other office maybe? Okay, I'm going to just, unfortunately, the sound is on, describing what this room is.
Hmm.
So this is the cabinet room as it
Mhm.
looked during Gerald Ford's presidency.
Yep.
And this is explanations of it. Each chair
Has someone's name on it, right?
has
The
someone's name
cabinet
on it. So
officer.
this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the Secretary of Transportation.
Transportation. Right, right.
This is the
And
Secretary of
are those the real chairs that they sat on?
No, this is all replica, isn't
All
it?
replicas.
This is all replica. And in fact, this is Secretary of Defense, which means Secretary. This is Gerald Ford's,
Oh, Gerald
the
Ford's
president.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is not only not the real chair, the real chair would have been taller than all the others. And as you can see, pushed it in, it's the same height as
It's the
everybody
same
else.
height, right, right.
And on his right is always the Secretary of State, because that's the ranking cabinet member.
Sure.
So anyway,
sure.
this is, and Eisenhower's picture is the one that was chosen to be in the cabinet room during his presidency. So I think that is, we'll go back now to the office. We're going to go past, he was in the Navy, so there are a lot of ships and things. Oh, okay. I'm going to just walk around here because she thinks she can turn off the sound and we can stay in the cabinet room and have our
Ooh.
conversation.
Okay, wonderful.
They're renovating here, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And there is downstairs, there's a piece of the Berlin Wall that became part of the museum collection. And it's got graffiti on it, so it's quite interesting. But here's the entrance to the cabinet.
To the cabinet room. Yeah, yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting. I'm here to speak. I hope if anybody's listening to us, they should come and hear me. And we're going to be doing an interview about the Watergate Girl book. I'll be answering questions, and it's just lovely. The music you hear in the background, can you hear that? Is from the funeral. It's can't do it. They're off. Oh, they're off. Oh, okay. The sounds are off. I'm going to sit in the president's chair. They said I could.
Okay, yes.
So I'm
Definitely
sitting in.
do
Just a second. Let me go sit down there, and then I'll try and turn the. Oh, well, it's not that easy to pull it out. Okay, I'm pulling it out. Okay, there we go. Oh, wow. I'm not tall enough for this chair. Now, if I'm good, I'll be able to get
Flip the camera
back to show me.
There we go.
Okay, so here I am sitting at. Let's see. I can't show you now, but it says the president.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
sitting where the president sits. Thank you. That's good. Whoa.
Oh, now there's sound above.
Yeah, that's Tyler Hills, who was one of the first female cabinet officers. And she's giving an introduction. Let's listen to her for a second. I gotta figure out how to get my hand out. There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Routinely at last meeting to address urgent matters.
So, tell me the questions you have, Victor.
So, well, I think the sound is off, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, no, that was a fantastic museum tour. I mean, it's crazy to me to think about from, this was more than 50 years ago that this happened, and I mean, some of the things that continue to be persistent problems in our democracy. I mean, one of the things that you said that I found, I was actually just reading about this before this episode, is Gerald Ford really came into the Oval Office during turmoil. I mean, the country was very divided, and as we all know, he pardoned
and an economic crisis as well.
An economic crisis, and so he pardoned Richard Nixon. Do you think that's the right decision? Should he have pardoned Richard Nixon? Was that the key to uniting the country again?
I believe his motives were pure, and that is why he did it. I spoke at the museum many years ago with Benton Becker and Gerald Ford's son about the pardon. And Benton Becker is the young lawyer from the White House counsel's office who was tasked by President Ford to deliver the offer of pardon to Richard Nixon. And in doing so, Gerald Ford said, and you must tell him about the case Burdick. It's a Supreme Court case that says that accepting a pardon is the same as pleading guilty. You are admitting guilt. And President Ford wanted to make sure that if Nixon accepted, he understood that
He
was what it
accepting
was.
guilt. Yeah.
And so Benton Becker went to San Clemente, which is where former President Nixon had moved and was living.
Mm-hmm.
And he did, of course, accept the pardon. And he described it in very, very emotionally touching
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
I was very moved by it. But I think that had Richard Nixon been indicted, we wouldn't be having the problem we currently have with people saying, oh, you can't indict a president, even a former president. It's wrong. It isn't wrong. When crimes are committed, people must be held accountable for those crimes. Richard Nixon committed crimes, and Donald Trump has committed crimes.
Yeah,
and they will keep on happening if we don't hold them accountable. So I think it was maybe at that time, the country wasn't as divided then as it is now. Back then, it was the three top Republicans went to the White House and said, Mr. President, if you don't resign, you will be convicted on the impeachment charges.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's something that certainly isn't happening now. The Republicans do not accept in any way that, Donald Trump has committed crimes, and proving it in a court of law might be a good thing. And maybe that would bring the country together. And besides, I think a lot of Democrats and a lot of independents will be angry at the Department of Justice if they don't take action.
Exactly.
To hold him accountable.
There was a great Atlantic piece yesterday, or I think maybe the day before. And for viewers, this will be a couple of weeks from now because we're doing a pre-recorded episode. But the author basically talked about how there really is no easy path for Merrick Garland. If Merrick Garland doesn't prosecute, Republicans or Democrats will be disappointed, and independents will be disappointed. If he does prosecute, the far right's going to be very riled up. And so what does he do? And I think the only path right now is when you have so much evidence and facts in front of you, accountability and justice matters. Because if you don't do it for Trump, then you set the precedent for every other president going forward. And you say that this behavior is normal, and it very much is not normal.
And that it's something that is above the law.
Right,
so
exactly.
We cannot have any person be above the law. So I completely,
and one of our former guests, James Comey, has suggested the possibility or has floated the idea of Joe Biden pardoning Donald Trump, which, I don't know whether or not
I would advise against it. I would definitely advise against it. It should not happen.
Yeah.
And the article, which will be in our show notes, we can post the link to that, does conclude that Merrick Garland will indict. Yeah. And he goes through the reasons why. Yeah. And it's not because Merrick Garland said, I'm going to, but it was based on multiple interviews and time spent. Exactly. It's a very fascinating article, well worth reading.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's go back to Gerald Ford for a second. So you got to see this up close, the museum. I was able to catch on to some things. What do you think? What was your favorite part about the museum?
Well, I actually think, of course, this is like reliving my life. Exactly. But we didn't go through the whole museum. And I think that some of the earlier stuff about his childhood, growing up, and frankly, learning, I didn't realize he was born to an abusive father, and his mother left him and moved to Grand Rapids, where we think she had family. That's why she moved to Grand Rapids, and was a single mother with a very, very, this happened within weeks of his birth, apparently. So it kind of changes your perception of who Gerald Ford was. He went on to be quite a star football player, very excellent athlete, good golfer as well, and did nicely at the University of Michigan undergrad, and then had to really talk his way into Yale.
And by talk?
Well, I don't have the facts completely, but in going through the museum with a curator who's new to the museum, so she's going to be doing some more research, and maybe I can come back and give a firmer answer, but it sounds like they weren't sure they were going to take him for a variety of reasons, and so he went to work at Yale as a coach. I hope I'm repeating you correctly. And she's nodding, I am. He went to work there as a coach and then said, please take me in. And they said, well, we're not sure. And he said, well, okay, I'm going to go do something else. And they said, okay, we'll let you in. And he was admitted. So
apparently, so I'm looking this up right now. Apparently, so he took a job as a boxing coach and as assistant varsity football coach at Yale University, and then applied to law school. So maybe it was that connection that maybe helped him a little bit.
Right, exactly. So I think it's strange that he became a boxing coach because, of course, he was known as a football player. But he did take, and of course, you know who else was a boxer? Judge Sirica was a boxer.
Oh, really?
And that was his thing. He was a boxer. The lights are going up and down, so if the lighting looks weird, it's they are self-dimming and brightening, but it's okay. So I mean, there's all these connections that you just don't think about.
Right.
And it's very interesting. And Grand Rapids, in addition to this museum, has a sculpture garden, botanic garden, the Meyer Gardens, which are absolutely fantastic. So people who are anywhere near Grand Rapids should definitely consider coming to visit the museum. Or if you're in Ann Arbor, like Barbara McQuaid, my sister-in-law, you should go to the library. This is the only presidential library and museum that are in separate cities. But Gerald Ford represented Grand Rapids for many, I can't remember how many terms he was in Congress, 7, I think, or maybe more. And he wanted the museum here, but he had donated his papers to Michigan. So the library is in Michigan, under the control of NARA. And I talked to the NARA people here about the fact that Donald Trump is incorrect when he says, for example, that Obama, and one of the people here used to work for the Obama Library, NARA controls all the documents that were sent for the Obama Library. They are not in the control of Obama. And that's because they belong to the people and to NARA. It's under NARA's control. So I just want our audience to understand that.
Yes, it does not belong to the former president.
Right. I also want to point out, can you see my pin?
Yes. What is it?
It's a round, it's the 50th. Well, it was a gift during my a book tour. The Watergate Hotel sponsored a book party for me. And they gave me, I don't know how to get my hand out of here. I'm doing wrong, sorry. They gave me this pin with a little squiggle on it, which is the Watergate Hotel symbol. And it says the Watergate Girl. And then it says up here 1972, which was
just for you. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I can post a picture where you can.
Yes, we'll definitely post a picture of this on Twitter and include it in our show notes. That's a great pin. Well, that was a wonderful exhibit of this museum. A great tour, and we hope our audience learned a lot from this. Is there anything else that either you or the person with you wants to say about this museum?
You want to say about the museum, or anything? No, I could go on. She said she could talk forever about it.
What are the hours? When can if our audience is interested?
10 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay, that's the Monday through Friday hours. There are Saturday, Sunday hours, but she only works Monday through Friday, so she doesn't know the hours on Saturday and Sunday. But they are open on Saturday and Sunday, and everybody should come. Presidential libraries. I've been to the LBJ Library in Austin. I will, of course, someday go to the Obama Library.
Yes, in Chicago.
My husband has been to the Truman Library, and they are fascinating, really interesting. Oh, of course, how did I miss this? I've been to the Nixon Library.
Which I have to visit now.
You must visit. You're close enough to go. You can take an Uber from LA, so you can definitely get there. Or you have those car rentals for
the zip cars. Yep.
Zip cars. You should do that. that. 'That. 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 'That the helicopter where he's doing his, I can't hold my phone and do my arm thing, but where he's holding up his hands in a victory
He's doing
sign
this.
and he's
Exactly. Yep.
resigning and leaving office. It's very meaningful. There was a big fight, which Nara won, to add a Watergate exhibit. The private foundation that was originally running the library said, no, Watergate didn't happen. And the National Archives said, oh, yes, it did. And you can't have a library that's part of the presidential library system that doesn't include this significant event. So that's how that came to be. So those are all worth, and I'm sorry, there we go. I can only hold it with one hand, which makes it very hard. So I'm going to leave the cabinet room and say goodbye to you all so that I can go prepare for my speech a little later today and do a mic check.
Wonderful. Well, we thank all of our viewers for watching this episode of iGen Politics. This looked and felt a little bit different because it was different. This is our first ever museum tour, and it was of a great museum. So we encourage all of our viewers to visit this museum in Michigan to learn more about Gerald Ford and his legacy. We'll be back next week with another great episode of iGen Politics. Remember,
by the way, I hope the camera is on the flags. And they are, one is the Marine Corps, I guess, right? The red one is Marine Corps and the Navy, but where's the Army? Coast Guard, but where's the Army? How does he not have the Army? Excuse me. Here's the Navy. Here's the that's not the Army flag I've ever seen, but here's an Army one. Okay, he does have the Army. I'm happy. As long as he has the Army, I'm good.
We've got all the flags.
Thank you all for joining us. I am glad. There we go. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be back next week for another great episode. Remember, you can find us on youtube.com/Politicon or wherever you follow your podcasts. See you next week.
Okay. Let us know if you like this episode.
Yes.
Bye.